Good day, and welcome to part 6 of our study of the book of Ecclesiastes. This is only a short section, actually only 3 verses, verses 9 to 11 of chapter 3. So let me read them to you. What profit has the worker from that in which he labors? I have seen the God-given task with which the sons of men are to be occupied. He has made everything beautiful in its time. Also he has put eternity in their hearts, except that no one can find out the work that God does from beginning to end. This is a very brief but sort of circumstantial area of the book. So in order to understand this fully, there are 2 things. First of all, I want to talk about the meaning of the word vanity, because we've been referring to it as meaning worthlessness or like a vapor, meaningless. And that's true, it does mean that, but it also means excessive pride or excessive importance of oneself. So keeping that in mind, let's go back to Genesis for a minute. It says in Genesis 1:1 that God created the heavens and the earth. Now if he created the universe, then he owns the universe. Whatever one creates, one actually owns until he either gives it away or sells it. So God created the heavens and the earth, therefore he owns the heavens and the earth. But he gave dominion over the earth to man, Genesis 1:27. After the fall, because we had at that time the choice to follow God or to follow Satan, and mankind chose to follow Satan, therefore making Satan his mentor rather than God. And after that, God said, in the sweat of your face you will eat bread, or you will work, or you will obtain a living. So, in that viewpoint, we are now to work, to do, and to obtain what we need. And also Satan is really in charge of this area. It says in Ephesians 2, you, referring to mankind, once walked according to the counsel of the world, the course of the world, according to the prince of the power of the air, the spirit who works in the sons of disobedience, among whom we all conducted ourselves in the lusts of the flesh. And it says also in John 16 that the ruler of this world is to be judged. So, bearing that in mind, let's go back to what Solomon is saying in these verses. He has already indicated that he has tried almost everything to find a meaning in life. He has tried wisdom, he has tried wealth, he has tried entertainment and pleasure. He has tried building gardens and buildings and vineyards. He has tried drugs, alcohol. And he certainly had plenty of companionship in the form of 700 wives and plus concubines. And he found that none of these gave him satisfaction. None of these gave him lasting pleasure or lasting meaning. So now, in the first part of chapter 3, he referred to the continuous cycle of the world, that everything seems to come in a season, a time for something good and a time for something unpleasant, a time for pleasure, a time for sadness, a time for loving, and a time for turning away love. There's a time, and this seems to be something which God has ordained from the beginning of time itself. And it's something which mankind never seems to be able to ultimately change. Yes, he can alter it to some extent, but never ultimately change. And he also referred to this in chapter 1 when he talked about the wind going from area to area and coming back to the same place, and the seas being evaporated, then falling as rain into the brooks and the streams and filling them up and going back to the sea in this continuous hydroponic cycle. So he's referring to this idea that regardless of what mankind does, he cannot alter the ultimate outcome of what God has ordained. Now bear in mind that he's doing this at a time when he has withdrawn himself from God and is trying to understand life without God being in it. But he's coming back to the point that you really can't understand it without God being at the basis of the whole thing. So he's saying, what profit does the worker from that at which he labors? What profit really does a man obtain? People labor all their lives to build things up, to build beautiful houses, to have cars, to have beautiful clothes, to have travels. And in the end, what does it all mean? Many times what we do labor for may be taken away by fires or floods or by disasters. Sometimes we don't keep what we obtain to any degree at all. But we labor for it. Is it really necessary? Should we really be laboring to this extent and to this degree? And he says, what really profit does it do for a man to do all this work? We're sweating. We have a lot of problems. It develops the different problems in our families, in our households, in ourselves, and we do a lot of labor really for naught. What really profit does it have for a man for all the labor that he does? He said he has seen the God-given task with which the sons of men are to be occupied. God has given us work to do. We all have to do work. None of us are supposed to be doing nothing. We are all supposed to have some kind of occupation, some kind of labor to do in this world. This man was never meant to just do nothing. So God has given us occupations, given us labor, given us things to do, but there's a limit to it. It's something that should be within the current context of what God himself wants, not of what we want. Because we keep listening to our own pride, to our own wants, to our own lusts of the flesh, according to Ephesians. This is under the sort of auspices of our mentor, which is Satan, who now runs this world. Remember, Satan offered Christ all the kingdoms of the world when he was tempted at the early part of his ministry. So Satan actually is in control of this world, and he has mentored us to work much more than we really need to, and to sweat much more than we really have to, in order to do the work which we feel we have to do. But he says he has seen the God-given task with which the sons of men are to be occupied. And that those tasks are not really unpleasant. We don't really enjoy the tasks that God has really given to us to do, because we are so busy trying to create more and do more and be more than we were meant sometimes to be. God has given us tasks to do, but most of those tasks involve him and his work and his plans, not our own plans and not our own work, not our own objectives. He said he has made everything beautiful in its time. And if you look at this, you'll see that most things are of that nature. Many times we don't see the whole picture. We see only the troubles that we're going through at the present time, or the troubles the world is going through at the present time, or the unpleasant side of things. We don't necessarily see the whole picture. And yes, there are many unpleasantries, and many of that is due to the fact that we listen to our present mentor and not to God. If everybody at all times did what God instructed us to do, the world would not have so much unpleasantness, so much hatred, so much violence, and so many wars. But we don't. But God has given us tasks to do, and Solomon says he has understood the tasks that God has given us to do, and not the tasks that we have taken upon ourselves. He said everything is beautiful in its time. We only see part. We don't see the beginning sometimes, and we don't see the end. We only see sometimes the unpleasant middle. As one person put it, it's like a house. You see a house or a building half done, it doesn't look like very much. But you may not have seen the plans at the start, and you may not see the results at the end. Sometimes the unpleasantness is only there to help make what is pleasant more obvious. From a book called Searching for Heaven and Earth, David Jeremiah quotes British media expert Malcolm Muggeridge, who quoted this: "Contrary to what might be expected, I look back on experiences that at the time seemed especially desolating and painful with particular satisfaction. Indeed, I can say with complete truthfulness that everything that has been truly enhanced and enlightened my existence has been through affliction and not through happiness, whether pursued or attained. In other words, if it ever were to be possible to eliminate affliction from our earthly existence by means of some drug or other medical mumbo-jumbo, as Aldous Huxley envisaged in Brave New World, the result would be to make life delectable, but to make it too banal and trivial to be endurable. This, of course, is what the cross signifies, and it is the cross, more than anything else, that has called me inexorably to Christ." So, what we have on earth, although we have bad times, sometimes those afflictions, sometimes those unpleasant times actually result in us being better people and actually closer to what we're meant to be than what we presently are. So, what Solomon says, everything is beautiful in its time. Everything is beautiful in its time. He has put eternity in their hearts. Now, the older versions of the Bible says he has put earth in their hearts. And there are different ways of interpreting this. Some people feel that he has put earth in their hearts in a way which makes people occupied with earth and therefore less occupied with God. And other people say because of the complexity of the earthly substances, it makes people more aware of God. It says in Romans that people are without excuse because of the majesty of the earth and of the heavens and of the seas and the skies. So what this really may mean is that he has put eternity, he has shown us through the complexity of life, through the complexity of the way things are organized, through his abilities, that he has enabled us to see the possibility of eternity. And in addition, he has also made everyone aware that there is something possibly beyond this. Even primitive tribes who have no connection with Christ or knowledge of Christ at all often have this sensation that there is something beyond this life, that there is something there which only a God can fill, nothing else, not work, not pleasure, not entertainment, certainly not drugs or alcohol, nothing except God himself. The problem is that we cannot find out the work that God does from the beginning to the end. We don't know it. Paul said he sees at times through a glass darkly. We see only part of what it is. But Solomon is trying to say that all his expectations, all his work, all his endeavors, all his achievements were really not very meaningful, because there is a concept of an inevitability of what God has done and is doing, and unless we take that into consideration, unless we understand the God-given aspects of life, unless we appreciate what God is doing and has done and will do, then we're never going to find the satisfaction or the meaning that we strive to have in our lives. So think about that. And that's enough for today. Join me next week. We'll finish up some more of chapter 3 of Ecclesiastes. Thanks for watching, and bye for now.